Hello and happy Friday, and thanks for tuning in to RadioFreeRhinecliff.org. And this show in particular, correct me if I'm Norm, I'm your host, Norm, and I'm thrilled to be here tonight with Eric Steinman.
Hey, how are you, Norm? Oh, wow. Claps even.
Yeah, nobody else gets claps. Eric, thanks for coming in. How's it going?
Good. I mean, it's the end of the week, so I'm a little spent, but I'm happy to be here.
A little spent, and why are you spent?
Working hard, sleeping less, just responsibilities of being a human being walking the earth, kind of thing.
And what are you working hard at these days?
Well, I guess we're launching right into it, aren't we?
Oh, we could beat around the bush.
We could beat around the proverbial bush. I am the executive editor of the Hudson Valley Pilot, which is a new digital news source for Rhinebeck and a little beyond Rhinebeck. And we launched in October. And we launched with a twice weekly newsletter and a website, but the website's pretty much softly launched. It's sort of being built out as we go. As the publisher Mark First likes to say, I think he says, we're building the plane as we fly it. So that's what we're doing.
Sounds dangerous.
Yeah, but exciting.
Yeah. And were you, I guess you're probably there from the beginning if it just started in October. Yeah,
I mean, I can't take total credit for it because it was really Mark First's idea. Mark First is a longtime resident of Rhinebeck. And he's known for many things, but one of the things that he sort of spearheaded was Rhinebeck Responds, and that was an outreach effort, a sort of charitable humanitarian outreach effort that was born out of the COVID pandemic. I don't know the exact dates, but I'm pretty sure it started in 2020. And I think he set out with pretty modest goals to raise a certain amount of money and help out local businesses that were obviously affected by lack of business during the pandemic. And he wound up, I think all said and done, raising about $280,000 for various businesses as well as individuals in and around Rhinebeck.
Which is amazing. And then he decided somehow to open this digital news source thing.
Thank you for keeping me on track.
That's why I get the big bucks.
So yeah, Mark reached out to me maybe almost a year ago. And we started having conversations about the need for local news, both on the sort of philosophical level, because in this country, we've seen a rapid and steady decline of local news throughout the country. And, you could attribute all sorts of societal ills to the lack of local news and the lack of representation and the lack of transparency.
Okay, let's stay here for a second. What kind of societal ills, and why is it really necessary to have local news?
Well, I think maybe it's not so evident. Maybe I'm just too deep in it that I just see it for what it is.
Well, there's newspapers in Poughkeepsie and Kingston and stuff, and and online stuff already.
And they've been at it for a long time. But my understanding, and I may need to be fact checked on this, but for instance, when I moved here to the area in 2005. Poughkeepsie Journal, I think, had a newsroom of about 60 to 70 reporters on staff.
Right.
And now I think it's less than 10.
Right.
So when you have that lack of coverage, and no shade on Poughkeepsie Journal, I think they work really hard and they're very professional. They just can't cover everything. So a lot falls through the cracks. And places like Rhinebeck, Red Hook, Millbrook, in other small towns and even smaller places just don't get the coverage, and things happen quickly here, or maybe not quickly enough, depending. But when I say quickly, I mean like big real estate developments, and a lot of the sort of momentum around creating the Hudson Valley Pilot was really from conversations that we were having, very casual conversations like this at like dinner parties and just meeting people for coffee, where people just didn't know what was happening.
Right.
They didn't know either the history of the area, or they didn't know who won the mayor's race, or they didn't know what that weird, what Mirbeau is. Where did how did that come out of the ground, instantaneously? So the feeling was we have to create something in which it will reflect back onto the community, and it will be something in which the community can feel like they can engage in. And right now, a twice weekly newsletter is doing a good job, but we're not doing enough. So we're in the sort of nascent learning to crawl stage.
And not doing enough. So there's things what are the things you'd like to do more?
Well, I mean, simply put, more coverage, more outreach, more events. Some of it is generating the sort of funds for it, because these things cost money and you have to do it right. We don't want to do anything half-assed. So I think the most important thing is more coverage and being able to cover everything. Like before we went on the air, we were talking about the quite exciting town hall meeting that happened this past Tuesday about workforce housing. And my understanding is that was like one of the biggest turnouts for a town hall meeting in as long as anyone could remember. I mean, I'm sure there are some people that have memories that extend further back, especially in Rhinebeck. But I believe that there were well over 100 people there, and that's just unheard of. Most town hall meetings and village meetings, there's you could throw a rock in the middle of the room and not hit anyone.
Right.
So yeah, we're trying to cover as much as we can and sort of tap into the things that we know that people care about, and to some extent the things that people don't really understand yet or really know about their community. I mean, I had this sort of lyrical idea early on, is that I wanted to answer the questions for the people here that they didn't even know that they had.
Right.
So,
well, that's nice. That it's nicely lyrical.
It's nicely lyrical.
So indulge me for a second. What happens if local things are not getting covered? You say Poughkeepsie and Kingston papers, they can't cover it. WAMC really can't cover hardly anything. What happens to the population and the voters and the citizens if they don't get this news?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of it is that there's an aspect of it that directly relates back to political representation, in that if you don't have accountability for people that are in office, whether they be county officials, whether they be mayors or police officials, then you cannot hold them accountable for anything. There's no transparency. And so things just happen and then they get swept under the rug, or where there should be change and there should be movement, there isn't.
Right.
So the idea is that if you have a free and impartial press, then we're bringing these things into conversation, and then the pressure is on both officials as well as authorities to address the public and the public's concerns.
Right.
And the intention behind this is not to be muckraking, but it's really to create conversation.
But certainly some people say on certain issues like, oh, it's muckraking.
I haven't heard it yet, but I'm more than willing.
I'll get a bigger megaphone.
Yeah, get a bigger one. I assume that I will get that eventually, right, as we delve deeper into things.
And that somebody else doesn't think is muckraking, but somebody does.
Yeah. I mean, it depends what your definition of muckraking is. I mean, right. At this point, journalism is under fire everywhere.
Yeah.
Not just in this country, but even, abroad.
Right.
And so I think there are people that would be inclined to point at any journalist or any news reporting institution and say it's muckraking or it's disingenuous or it is the problem.
Right. And you said an impartial news source. Mm-hmm. How in the world do you do that? How do you stay impartial?
It's not always easy. I mean, I'll be honest with you.
Well, it seems nearly impossible.
It's not impossible, but it's almost like you have to sort of rewire how you approach things. I've been a writer for over 20 years, and I'm used to writing from my perspective. I sometimes have very strong opinions about things. So it requires me to keep in mind that the main objective is not to impart my opinion or my view, but to inform and to create as much information, as much conversation to serve the community, basically. And,
Right.
and part of the hope is that it will come back to us and that it will create conversation. I really don't want it to be a one-way street. I don't want it to just be like the Hudson Valley Pilot is reporting to you and, you sit there and just absorb it and, we're going to get all your attention. I really want and hope that this creates conversation.
So is there letters to the editor section, or will there be?
There definitely will be.
Uh-huh.
It's interesting because we are working with a content platform that is helping us sort of set up the website. It's their platform. And when we were working with them, one of the options was to have comments, which, a lot of websites do. The New York Times does. And we were advised, turn off comments.
And why did they say turn off comments?
Because it's you're just inviting chaos.
But when you say you don't want it to be a one-way street, I mean, really, that's the only other lane, isn't it?
Well, it's not the only other lane. If we give, if we have something like letters to the editor, which we eventually will, hopefully within the next 4 to 6 weeks, and trust me on this, that those will not always be like gushing love letters to the editor. They will be some critical love letters, and they will all be love letters. But I've gotten some constructive criticism already, and some of it is very well intentioned, and some of it is a little on the angry side. But we plan on publishing as much as possible other views from the public. But it's not a done deal that we'll never turn comments on, because I think it could be valuable. But as I said earlier, we're figuring this out as we go.
Right.
I mean, if you've been on any of the local Facebook groups, I think you could probably understand and appreciate how even in a community as tightly knit as ours, and as much as people know one another, it can get, when you're semi-anonymous, it can get really, really nasty.
Yeah.
And this is not about avoiding criticism towards me or towards the pilot. It's about avoiding just it being a platform for just nefarious backbiting.
Right. So speaking of semi-anonymous, and you mentioned this meeting on Tuesday about workforce housing. Sure. Which I'm very interested in. Somebody sent around a flyer.
Yes.
And anonymous. Mm-hmm. It wasn't really signed. There was a URL. Mm-hmm. I went to the URL and there was nothing there. Said, we're sorry, this page doesn't exist. And maybe they took it down after Tuesday. I don't know. But who was that? Any idea?
I'm not at liberty of commenting.
You're not at liberty to divulge?
No, I can't.
But did you guys figure that out?
Yeah, I figured it out.
I would want to figure that out right away.
I figured that out on Wednesday.
And would you report on that?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, you did?
I did, yeah. Oh. Obviously, you didn't read the newsletter today.
What newsletter? I'm kidding.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't read the newsletter today.
Is this a radio show?
I'm not sure what it is. I didn't read the newsletter today because I was researching all this other stuff and I missed it.
Not researching stuff about me, obviously.
Yeah, sure. I got a whole little page stuff about you.
Okay. Okay, I could address some of it.
Yeah, I mean, I probably don't know the name, but like, what kind of group or what kind of interests? Where does this person come from?
Well, I mean, just to step back a little further. So this is a big issue. Yeah. There's been a lack of affordable housing in the area for a long time. And the issue has just gotten worse in the area.
And not just Rhinebeck, like all towns almost across the U.S.
It's not reserved to Rhinebeck. So, I remember having a conversation a few years ago before I was involved with before I was involved with the pilot, with someone who was a town official and sort of bemoaning the fact that there's a huge lack there, and that people can't affordably move into the area. And therefore, when you don't have the ability for new families to come in, and families that, represent sort of socioeconomic diversity or just diversity in general, then you have a community that's pretty limited. I'm not going to say that it's dying or it's in peril, but it's limited as far as its growth and as far as its ability to sort of evolve and remake itself. So getting back to the issue is that, so there's been this movement to create workforce housing. And if anyone needs an explanation on that, that's just basically affordable housing for people that work in and around Rhinebeck that maybe are in the service industry or don't get paid a doctor's wage, that they could afford something, that they have to only pay, I think it's roughly about 30 to 33% of their income towards rent or towards a mortgage payment. So there was a movement to fund this project called the Hamlet, which is it's kind of on the, I guess that would be the north side of Star Library, and it extends out towards Astor Drive.
Right. So across the street to the north of the Star Library.
Yeah, it's a 23-acre plot.
And just east of the highway garage.
Yeah, we may be totally wrong on this, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, as far as our coordinates.
Right.
But, so it's a 23-acre plot. It was not created, but the project plans were developed by some group called the Kearney Group, or Kearney Group. And it's, I think, I'm trying to remember. I think it's about 60 units. I should know this off the top of my head, but it's about 60 units. And the part of the proposal was to clear cut a lot of the, this is like kind of not exactly old growth, but it's a woodland buffer area. And a lot of people are very upset about it.
Right. Some
of the upset comes from the woodlands being greatly compromised, because you're building a 60-unit facility.
Right.
Some people are upset because it's going to bring more traffic into the area. Some people are just simply upset because the construction is going to take a great deal of time, and there's going to be jackhammers and trucks rumbling by, and it's off-putting. So at the same time, there's that sort of NIMBY element to it.
Yeah.
Which is that people like the idea of affordable housing, but when it comes down to it, they're like, not in my backyard. I'm not accusing anyone here who has opposition to it of being motivated by that, but it is not difficult to see it as that. But I think this is actually a very complicated issue, because I think that there are truly people that have significant and valuable opposition to it that really do want affordable housing in the area. So what happened was, this plan has been sort of bandied about. It was originally called the Hamlet, and then very recently it got a name change. Maybe it was like a rebranding, and now I think it's called Locust Hill, or the Locust Hill. And there was a hearing about it. We happened to run a piece about the proposal or the project on Tuesday. And it was just good timing. And then there was a hearing about it at Town Hall on Tuesday night. And that was the hearing in which it was exciting for some people and probably really distressing for others, or maybe distressing for all. I don't know. Right. But I think there was a lot of argument. There was a lot of emotion. I don't think anything got settled. It was, let me rephrase that. I don't think it was termed as a hearing. It was termed as a workshop. So my understanding was that it wasn't going to be, there was a public comment period, but I think everything had to be framed as a question. And a lot of people came without questions, but more came with a perspective.
Right.
And I think it became very heated and difficult. And this is just one of many things in the area in which I think, up until recently, a lot of people didn't know about it. And I'm not going to take credit for it, but I think we had a part in bringing this to the public. I mean, there's also, I think Daley Freeman did run something about this project quite a few months ago, and I need to give credit to the Red Hook Daily Catch, because Victor Feldman, who I believe has been on the show. No, maybe I'm sorry, he's been on another show. Wrote a really great in-depth piece. I believe it published this week on the subject as well.
Huh, nice. Now, the Red Hook Daily Catch, they're kind of doing the same thing that you guys are doing.
Yeah.
And did they start at about the same time?
No. They started a good year earlier than we started. So they're doing a great job. And just to be clear, we did not come on the scene because we felt like they weren't doing a good enough job.
Right.
I think they are doing a great job. And this is, we're getting to one of the sort of backbone elements of this whole project, is that we are not here to compete or, push out anyone. There's this element that we really feel strongly about. When I say we, I mean the whole team, including Mark First and some of the other people I work with, is that we feel very strongly that more local journalism is better than just like one entity.
Right.
And it's not that we shouldn't trust the Daily Catch to do everything that they need to do, but we just feel like we don't have to compete. We could collaborate. And that's on the horizon. I feel like I have a very warm and like affable relationship with Emily, who is the publisher of the Daily Catch. Excuse me.
Yeah, she seems pretty good.
She's great. She's super talented and just like
hardworking.
Really hardworking. She's got a lot of energy. She's got a lot of interesting perspective. We actually had lunch on election day, and it was great. It was like a meeting of the minds.
I love that.
So we totally support them, as well as we support other local entities like the Shwangunk Journal. And there's a paper down in Cold Spring and Kingston Wire. We collaborated with them on what we called it was an alliance to cover the election.
Right, I read that on your website.
Yeah,
which sounded great.
It was an experiment, and I think we wanted it to be great, and I think it had moments of greatness, but it was a learning process. Right. And I think there were some really great things that we did. Like we created a Spanish language voters guide that
that's great.
Published out to everyone. So just to reach that community so that we could translate a lot of the articles into Spanish.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And then that would be a perfect thing to share with Red Hook.
Yeah. Yeah, and we've shared stuff with the Daily Catch, and they've shared stuff with us.
Right.
I mean, it's a very like casual back and forth right now. There's no it's very like handshake. There's no contracts or anything.
And do you ever say do you ever find out they're covering something and then say, oh, well, we won't do that? Is it that kind of thing?
Not really. It's interesting because there's been a little, they covered, I don't know if you remember, about a month or two ago, they took down all the trees on Montgomery Street.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so they had covered it before we did, but I felt like it was really important that we covered it as well and that we gave our sort of perspective on it. And I think, it's not enough. I mean, it depends. It's like, if it's really newsworthy, I'm going to cover it, even if they cover it. But if they did an in-depth day in the life of Norm Magnusson, I don't think I would try to do that again.
Oh, you should. I think not enough journals could really do that. No. So you said the tree thing on Montgomery Street, and you felt it was important to give your perspective on it.
Yeah.
Is there an opinion section of your paper?
It's coming.
So you give your perspective. I mean, it doesn't sound like it's necessarily unbiased perspective. It makes me think, well, this is how you see it. These are your thoughts about it.
Yeah.
It makes me feel there's an element of opinion in there.
Well, I don't think it's so much opinion, but it sort of takes different things into account. I mean, I would have to, with that particular story, I'd have to compare apples and oranges to, back up my claim here, because I don't have those in front of me.
But it seems perfect that you would. I mean, you're the paper serving this town.
Yeah, I mean, I think in some ways, the motivation is more that we want to represent the locality in which we live. And, Red Hook Daily Catch does a great job, but they're in Red Hook, and so we're in Rhinebeck, and
Right.
we're not at the point where we're wanting to go into Red Hook and report on Red Hook. But if it's something that has a direct relationship to Rhinebeck, that I'm trying to think of what an example would be, but let's say if there was like a shuttle service that was really kind of amazing and revolutionary and cut down on traffic in between Rhinebeck and Red Hook, then that would be something we'd want to cover, and that would be both a Red Hook Rhinebeck story.
Right.
But at this point, we're
Or a sale at Warren Cutlery.
that's in the DMZ.
Yeah. The DMZ.
Yeah.
And is it a similar sort of business model? I mean, will you eventually be advertiser supported? Is that the goal?
Well, we are right now in the process of becoming a not-for-profit. So it's not advertisers, but it's sponsors. And yes, that's in the works.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, one more thing before we break for the drink, which you so nicely brought.
Oh yeah, the ice is melting.
You get support from individuals as well?
Yeah. We've gotten a lot of support.
I'm guessing there's a donate button on the website.
There is a donate button.
What's the URL?
You really expect me to have that off the top of my head?
Yeah. I believe it's Hudson Valley Pilot.
Oh, I thought you meant the URL for the donate.
No.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was like / blah blah blah.
Yeah, no.
It's hvpilot.com.
hvpilot.com.
Yeah, and if you go there's a donate button on the front page.
Right. And right now it's not, but eventually in a year or so when you get your 501c3, it will be tax deductible.
Yep.
Right,
yeah, I mean,
now it's just a lovely gift to support local journalism.
Yeah, I may be wrong on this, but I think starting in January or February, it will be tax deductible.
Oh. And will you be a sort of registered nonprofit by then?
I believe so.
Oh, knocking on wood.
Knock on wood.
Sounds fast.
I mean,
I thought I read somewhere there that it was going to take about a year, that you all expected that.
Well, this gets into, I should probably know this, but this gets into the territory of like the separation between the business end and the editorial end.
Yeah.
And I try to be squarely on the editorial end.
And church and state.
Church and state,
which one
exactly.
are you in this equation?
I'm always state.
You're the state?
Yeah.
And the publisher's the church?
Well,
Is
sure.
it usually that? Is that what most people would say? Would he say he's the church?
I don't know.
Or would he think, yeah.
I think you've interviewed him, right?
I did.
You didn't get that out of him?
No.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'm feeling...
He called me a heretic and tried to burn me or something.
Then there you go. There's your answer, plain and simple.
All right, so you brought a cocktail for us.
Yes.
It's Friday afternoon. It's 5:28 and 44 seconds. What'd you bring?
I don't know. I looked outside. It's dark as dark.
It's no good.
It's not afternoon.
No.
Well, I brought this. I kind of made this up.
Oh, good.
And I know that... I don't know if it's okay to divulge something personal about you that I know about you.
Oh God!
We're gonna start with your.
Please tell me there's no baloney in this thing.
We're gonna start with your waist size.
My waist size.
Yeah. No.
So it's a French 75.
No, this is no. I think Mary Kay Lambino brought you a French 75. I would not.
I remember her.
Yeah, I remember her too.
Yeah.
So I know that you, since we're on the eve of Sinterklaas. That you are a professional grumpus.
I guess it feels more like an amateur job that I do. I mean, I think I'm amongst the professionals.
Yeah. Well, I think you bring a little pro to it.
Yeah. Well,
so I made something called, I don't know. I think I'm calling it the Grumpus's inner child.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So
well, I'm not driving, so fill it up. Oh, shake! Give it a shake in front of the.
Ice is all melted.
The ice is all melted. This is terrible.
I'm gonna drink.
Can we do this again? Yeah, we sat here too long without drinking. So it's tequila.
Okay.
Mezcal.
A
little bit of local maple syrup.
Nice.
Some bitters. And some orange peel.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can't wait to try it. Yeah. And where's the maple syrup come from? How local?
It's tree juice.
I'm sure that's enough for tree juice. It comes from trees.
No, it's
what
from
what kind of trees?
It's called Tree Juice.
I'm sorry. I thought you were being snarky.
No, never here.
No,
are you kidding me?
Not on this show. First time for everything.
Okay. So it should be a little smoky, a little spicy.
Cheers.
Cheers.
What kind of mezcal?
Oh, I wish I could remember that.
That is delicious.
It's the mezcal I have at home.
That is really, really yummy.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I kind of made it up.
Yeah. And
Is it
it's
good? Yeah.
it's called the Grumpus's. Grab a cup or a glass. A
Yeah, I think
Grumpus's
there's a
inner
little
child.
more in here. Yeah, the Grumpus's inner child, or the inner child of the Grumpus.
Yeah.
Depends on
However you want to put it.
Yeah.
You will. So you said you've been a writer for a long time, and I've seen some of your writing. You ran this thing called Edible
Hudson Valley. Yep.
which was a gorgeous magazine.
Thank you.
I mean, it's really very pretty, nicely done.
Thank you. I'm proud of it.
Yeah. Oh, good. But that seemed like more sort of writing and less sort of journalism.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think to be fair, that's what it was. It was, I think there were stories that we ran, and granted, I was the editor-in-chief of it, and I was writing for it, but I was largely, like, my chief role was being the editor and working with writers and photographers and illustrators and choosing the stories and the layout. But there were stories that we covered that were journalism in a lot of ways. One of the stories that I was most proud of, which, the magazine journalism is different than newspaper journalism. It's just a sort of different approach. But one of the stories I was most proud of is I met this gentleman named Tom Schwartz, who is still a dear friend, and he was a hospice nurse. He's since retired, and he approached me, and he had a few ideas, and then we started talking about being a hospice nurse. And at the time, I wasn't that aware of what it meant to be a hospice nurse. In my mind, I think I just felt like it was an end-of-life nurse and end-of-story kind of thing. And he started telling me about it, and one of the things that he described to me was the last days or hours of someone's life and being present for that. And we kind of got on the subject of last meals.
Oh, right.
And it was really, he wrote it. I'm not going to take any credit away from him, but it was sort of collaborative because I kind of coaxed it out of him. And I believe we did title the story Last Meals, and he wrote about the relationship of food with a person's last days. And that had everything to do with the family wanting to nourish the
Right.
dying, as well as, that person's relationship to food. And a lot of times it's like a refusal. Like they don't want to nourish themselves anymore. And it becomes a very emotionally laden thing.
Yeah.
And it was a really impactful piece. And I think it won an award. I can't remember what award it won. But, it really resonated with me.
So, well, what would was this in there? What was your last meal? Or what would it be?
What would my last meal be?
Yeah.
Just this cocktail.
Yeah, it's really good.
I don't know. I've thought about that. It is really fascinating. I don't know if
You must have come up with something way back when the article was running.
Well, I mean, just to be clear, like this was about people that were dying and probably like their appetite was very, very limited.
Right.
And it had probably more to do with the people around them wanting to eat, because that's the whole thing. It's like if someone is on their way out, a lot of times the sort of the motivation of a loved one is to nourish, to feed, to keep their strength up. And I totally understand it. And, since that article ran, I've been in a handful of situations where I've been that person there with someone who's kind of on their way out. And like it actually happened this year, in which I was caring for a very dear friend who was on his way out. And I was doing that like nourishing thing and wanting him to eat. And it becomes kind of all consuming. So
I'm sorry you lost your friend.
Thank you.
And do you do that? I mean, have you become sort of a hospice worker?
No, I haven't.
No, you just happen to be.
No, I just haven't. Maybe it's bad luck, but it's interesting. I've generated a lot of like deep admiration for hospice workers, and I know a few locally, And my mother, truth be told, is currently in hospice now.
Right.
She's not here locally, but she's in California. So it's incredible work that these people do.
It's amazing, just beautiful, gorgeous work.
Yeah.
My father passed away a number of years ago, and he had a hospice nurse. He was in Atlanta, and this guy was just amazing and so sweet.
Yeah.
And I saw him a few weeks before he passed. I spoke to him like hours before he passed, and the nurse like facilitated all of this stuff.
Yeah.
He's like, well, your dad can't speak to you, but he can hear you.
Yeah. I'm so glad you had that experience.
Oh my God, it's amazing. I will never, ever forget that gift of being able to say goodbye to a loved one.
Yeah. It's really, really powerful. And it's something, I mean, there's so many levels in which they facilitate that sort of interaction. And, they're on paper, they're there for the patient or the person that is declining, but they're also very much there for friends and family. And they help you sort of process these things and let you know what your limits should be. And just, they also sort of channel your attention to things that maybe normally you wouldn't be thinking of. Like the friend of mine who passed recently, excuse me, it was one of those things where there were a bunch of people around, and I think people don't know how to act around someone who's dying.
No.
And so it's a little bit of a funny story, but someone had the idea of like, I know what would be good for him is if we hire a harp player to come in, and they like hired someone to bring in a harp and to play the harp by his bedside. And he was just a few days away from dying, but he had enough of a sense of himself and a sense of humor that he was like, hell no. Get them the hell out of here.
A harp player.
Yeah.
No, I wasn't an accordionist. Crying out loud.
Yeah.
Huh.
Xylophone. That would be mine.
Yeah.
With my last meal.
Vibes with your last meal.
Yeah.
Bacon cheeseburger, I think, is probably what I'd get.
I think, what I think mine would be? I don't know. God, that's a hard question. I think it would be a really good bowl of Vietnamese pho.
Oh. Wow.
Yeah.
And where do you get that around here?
You don't.
You don't?
You don't. You just remember it fondly.
Somebody I knew went out for that just a few weeks ago down in Wappingers.
Yeah, I heard there's a place down there somewhere. I haven't tried it. Wappingers is pretty far. I know you are familiar with it because, you have talent opportunities down there, but not all of us get down there.
No. Again, sorry to hear about your mom who's declining out in California.
Yep.
And you were raised in California?
I was raised in Los Angeles.
Oh. And is that where mom is?
Yep. Yeah, she's in the San Fernando Valley. And she's been declining for quite some time. She has Alzheimer's.
Oof.
Yeah, it's been a long haul.
Egads.
Yeah. Boy, we're making this fun.
Yeah, it's been super
Should not
fun.
have brought up the depressive alcohol.
I'm glad. Yeah. I'm glad you brought all this booze.
Yeah.
So you grew up there. And
yes.
Did you live in the same house the whole time? Where did you live in L.A.?
Well, my parents were divorced, so I did the thing.
Like from the time you were a little kid?
Yeah, actually. Yeah. Believe it or not, they separated when I was 6 months old. I thought it was my fault.
Well, it probably was.
It was.
You're such a downer. They're like this guy. All he talks about is...
my sister blamed it on me for quite some time because she's a few years older, and so she was like, it's because that guy came
Good
around.
For her.
Yeah.
Are you friends with her now?
Oh, yeah. We're very close.
That's good.
But yeah, my parents separated when I was about 6 months old. My father moved to the swinging Hollywood Hills.
Uh-huh.
His next door neighbor was, you want to guess?
Hollywood Hills. Hugh Hefner.
No, not that good.
You said swinging. Joey Heatherton.
Close. You got the first initial right.
Really? All right, I give up.
Johnny Mathis.
Johnny Mathis.
Yeah.
She wore blue velvet.
Yeah. And I will say that Johnny Mathis beautiful voice
Yeah.
does not give out Halloween candy on Halloween. I know
Oh,
he's dead
forget it.
now, and I'm sorry.
Well, I don't care if he's dead. He's dead to me.
He was dead to me when I was standing on his front door knocking, and he didn't come to the door.
Really?
Yeah, I'm hurt.
And so what years was this? I'm going to guess like 1978?
Yeah, it was in the 70s. And also down the street was Greg Brady.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Great poor guy. He's got an actual name, an actual first name.
Yeah,
and
his
a
name
surname.
is Barry something.
Yeah.
He wasn't very nice either. I'm sorry, Greg.
But did he give out candy?
No, but I have a story about Greg Brady.
Lay it on me. Is it a super depressing story like all the
No,
rest of
but
your stories?
it's a little gross.
Oh, good.
And it's almost a little creepy.
Uh-huh.
Because, so you have to understand, this is like the 1970s, the Hollywood Hills. And, you know, it was a different time. And so our parents my father and my stepmother would sort of leave us alone for long stretches. And, you know, it's Los Angeles, it's the summer, and we didn't have a pool, and we would get kind of bored as kids. And we were young, and we would just basically go find houses with swimming pools where no one was home, and we would swim in their pools. You know, and that's
Only kids ever to have done that.
only kids ever to have done that. And so, you know, and we were sort of avid watchers of the Brady Bunch because it was in syndication and on TV all the time. And one day we were literally probably 5 houses down. We were walking down, and I was maybe 4, and my sisters were like 7 and 8 respectively. And Greg Brady was like waxing his car, his like muscle car, and doing his thing, and he wasn't wearing a
A
shirt.
Camaro IROC.
It was, you know, I was too young to be able to ID the car.
Right.
But he's like waxing it, and my sisters were, you know, kind of swooning, and I recognized him. But, you know, it didn't occur to me that he was special.
Right.
But I just knew him from TV. But, like, you know,
Whatever.
Exactly. And so we started talking to him, and he started boasting about like all the cool stuff he had in his house, and he told me that he had a pinball machine, and I'm 4.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm 4, and I'm like, can I see it? And he goes, no. And I was a little taken aback, and then he started talking about all the other stuff. Like he had this and that. And he was probably in his 20s at this point.
Gumball machine.
Yeah,
Candy
probably.
bar maker. And
the thing that I remember is that he didn't have a shirt on. He had his back to me, and he had little bumps on his back. And I pointed at them, and I said, "What's on your back?" And he kind of did that over his shoulder looking thing, and he said, "That's acne." And I was like, "What's acne?" And he's like, "It's a pimple." And I had never heard the word before.
Right.
I mean, I'm 4. I didn't
Yeah.
really have that issue yet. And so Greg Brady introduced me to back acne.
was he on steroids or something?
No. But it was a little creepy. It was just like the
A
whole...
little gross,
Yeah,
really.
it was a little gross. It was like...
I mean, he didn't plan to have back acne.
he didn't. But
but
it
still.
got a little more intimate than I wanted it to get.
Well, you know, you asked the questions.
But just to be clear, I never went into his house.
You didn't?
No.
Well, not after that.
Not after that.
No.
I didn't want to give back acne. Yeah.
No matter how many pinball machines he had.
Yeah.
Wow. So you lived there until you graduated high school?
Yep. And I traveled quite a bit. I traveled all through Southeast Asia and North Africa. And,
During high school? Or
no,
after high school?
After high school.
After Fairfax High?
Yeah. Oh, wow. You looked that one up.
Sure. 7850 Melrose.
Yeah. Yeah, that was interesting because I don't know how familiar you are with LA, but Fairfax High is right on Melrose and Fairfax. And that's kind of this interesting crossroads of Fairfax is the very, or was, I should say, it was a very kind of traditional conservative Jewish strip. Not unlike the Lower East Side was at a certain point. And then Melrose had been a very sleepy place, but then it became this sort of ground zero for like this sort of punk rock retail new wave retail, whatever it was.
Oh, wow.
And
Such as?
I don't know if any of it would be familiar to you. There was
Right.
a place called Flip.
Okay.
There was a place called Poser and Soap Plan, and I worked at a place
Sort
called
of like the hot topic of the late 70s.
Yeah, but this is before like this stuff was in malls. And
Right.
I worked at Flash Feet, which was like the place where you got thigh-high boots. And I would have people come in and I would outfit them in thigh-high boots, and I was like a 16-year-old kid.
Did you ever have thigh-high boots yourself?
I did not have thigh-high boots myself, but I had I think they were 16-hole Doc Martens. We sold a lot of Doc Martens.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was, like a little punk rock kid.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was fun. It was really fun.
I want to see a picture of that.
I could send you a picture.
And so what year is this again?
This is like 86.
Okay.
Yeah, about 86. And actually, because I remember I got sort of, someone came in and they said, we're doing this fashion show that is the 10th anniversary of punk rock. And Malcolm McLaren, who was the manager of the Sex Pistols, and then he went on to be the manager of like Bow Wow Wow and Adam and the Ants and a bunch of other stuff, and he had his own career, was doing it. And
Didn't he do Grace Jones too or something?
I think he had involvement, but I think she probably deserves more credit than he does. But so I wound up like being in this punk rock fashion show with Malcolm McLaren. He was like putting determining what I wore, and I was 16 years old, and I could show you that picture because I actually found it on the internet.
Oh, yeah. Is it on your Facebook page?
It might be.
I
have not been back to my Facebook
And so
page.
who were the bands who you loved back then?
Oh God, there were a lot. I mean, LA at that time, it was you could see a lot of different bands in clubs that were relatively small. I mean, the two bands that at that time that were battling it out in small clubs were Guns N' Roses and Jane's Addiction.
Wow.
And I was never really a big Guns N' Roses fan. And honestly, I was very friendly with the people in Jane's Addiction, but I was not a huge fan of theirs. I tended to be like more into kind of harder, more obscure stuff.
Such as?
I'm trying to remember at that time. I mean, honestly, at that time, I think I was in love with the Velvet Underground.
Okay.
Which obviously they were not. They were no longer a band.
Right. Not really hardcore, not really LA.
No, they had nothing to do with LA. I mean, I don't even know if they ever.
I was in love
LA.
with X for years, and still am.
Yeah, so I saw
years and
X
years.
many times, and interestingly enough, and God, you're getting me into the name dropping territory. This is
You bring it
terrible.
on.
So
I had one other guest who name dropped a lot.
Really,
No,
I'm sure there's been a few.
maybe. I don't know.
So my girlfriend in high school, her family was really good friends with everyone in X, with Exene and John Doe. Exene was one of the singers, and John Doe was the bass player. And so I got kind of folded into that group, not into the band, but socially, I hung out with them.
What
a lot.
a blast!
Yeah, it was really fun. And Exene, she was weird.
She's a Trumper now.
Yeah, she lives in
Huge
Idaho.
conservative
I know.
Trump supporter.
She was always very nice. She made me a peanut butter and jelly sandwich once, which was really nice.
That's the coolest thing.
In her trailer after a show.
Right.
It was a show it was X headlined, and then it was the Dickies. I don't know if that means anything to you. And Jane's
No.
Addiction opened.
Nice. All right, what kind of jelly?
I think it was grape.
Nice.
Yeah, no, not that nice.
What would you have preferred it to have been?
Raspberry jelly. I'm much more of a raspberry jelly person.
You're like Bon Maman, sort of that nice.
No, the best raspberry jelly is the one up at Montgomery Place Orchards. They make their own. It's royalty raspberry. Don't let anyone turn you any other direction but that way.
Royalty raspberry.
Yeah.
That's the name of their preserves.
Yeah.
It's not a special kind of raspberry, is it? That I never heard of.
I don't think so. But I would have to do my research on that. But they're closed for the season, so if you haven't gotten it already, you got to wait till.
Do you have some?
Maybe.
Oh, where do you keep it? Do you lock your doors at night?
Yes,
No,
I do.
That's all right. Never
Yeah,
mind.
I grew up in LA. Are you kidding me? I still lock my doors.
And was it tough? Was it a tough place to grow up?
Yeah, it's interesting because I have a teenage son who has lived his whole life in Rhinebeck, and he does not understand the level of danger in which I dealt with. I mean, there were drive-by shootings. I knew people that died. There was drugs, gangs, the whole deal. It was as bad as you think it was.
And I'm guessing you were into a bunch of that stuff. Maybe not the gangs.
I was never into the violent aspect of it.
Well, the drug part. Now is a good time to admit to everything.
Okay.
I mean, you haven't finished your drink yet.
Oh, yeah.
Drink up and then admit to everything.
I'm a teetotaler.
A what?
A
teetotaler?
Teetotaler, rather. Yeah. Teetotaler.
Teetotaler. That's good.
Yeah, there were some drugs.
Yeah.
But my son might be listening, so maybe there weren't.
Yeah. No, I'm sure there weren't because drugs are no good.
There was math. Remember, this was the era of math, M-A-T-H.
Oh, math.
This was the era of Nancy Reagan's Just Say No.
Just Say No, which was so persuasive.
So persuasive. I was so
convinced. Like, oh, wow, I was about to have this drug. But
yeah, the First Lady says, just say no.
So there you go.
Yeah.
So you graduated eventually on time from Fairfax High School at 7850 Melrose.
Yes.
And then what? Where'd you go from there?
I traveled quite a bit. And I worked for a little while, and then I think after about a year, I moved up to San Francisco.
And you traveled all over? You said, would you say Kuala Lumpur or Bali or
I went to
Thailand
Bali.
or?
I went to Myanmar. I went to Vietnam. I went to India and Taiwan, Japan, Indonesia, the whole thing.
Amazing. For a whole year?
No, I would kind of go and make enough money that I could kind of escape for a month or 2 or 3.
Uh-huh.
And that, at that time, it wasn't that hard.
Making money selling Doc Martens to young punks.
Yeah. I worked in the film industry a little bit. I worked for a company called Carolco, which was a division of TriStar. And at the time, they were producing movies like Total Recall.
Okay.
And the Rambo movies. The third Rambo movie, I think.
Rambo 3, it's the best, really, of the franchise.
It's really, It's
17 is good, but 3 is really the best.
3 is where they hit their stride.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to remember what other ones. They did like some Mickey Rourke movies.
What did you do?
I was like a PA. It's not like glamorous work. It's like the director needs a script from, Burbank. Can you go get it? And then you're like on set just waiting for somebody to.
But it's close to the glamour. It's glamour proximate.
Yeah.
And you had a car? You had your own car at that point?
Oh, yeah.
What kind of car did you have? Was it nicer than Greg Brady's car?
Oh, no. God, no. No, but I loved my first car. My first car was a 1963 Dodge Dart.
Oh.
And it was green and the paint had oxidized. And the really cool thing about it is it had that sort of space age modern feel to it.
Uh-huh.
And it had push button gears. So instead of like a,
Really?
Yeah. So you would push the button and it would go into reverse, or push another button and it would go into drive or neutral. And it was just kind of a dream ride. And it had a V6 engine.
And do you look at them now and think,
yeah,
I could have one of those again?
I would love to have one of those again. And I killed the car.
All right, I'm pulling up. Is one of those the car? I pulled it up on the interwebs here.
Yeah.
Top left.
I didn't have the.
That's a pretty cool looking car.
Yeah, it was very cool. It was really nice, and yep, that's it. And it had a V6 engine, which was a significant engine
for a tiny car like that, especially. Yeah,
and it kind of roared, and I killed it because I had a good friend who also had the same car, and we would sort of trade stories about it. And one day he told me, he was like, these cars go really fast. You could take this car up to 125 miles per hour. And I was like, really? And
you did. And you blew the head gasket. And
I did.
It just died.
I did. There was this spot on the 10 freeway, which is the main freeway that actually goes from Los Angeles out to Florida. And there's a spot where I knew there would not be any cops, and it was like 2 a.m. and I was like, I'm going to take this thing as fast as it will go.
And you were drunk,
No, I was not drunk.
but no drugs either.
I don't know.
We're just going to go with that.
We'll go with that.
And is that what happened?
Yeah, I blew a rod. And it was like pa-boonk. And then
Oh, that's so horrible.
it was bad. It was and it was sad. It was kind of devastating because it's that feeling like you have, at one moment you're like this teenager with all this hubris and you're like, I could do anything, I could fly, and then all of a sudden you're like, I destroyed my car, I'm an idiot.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it
Can't
was a
fly.
learning moment.
You trying to build the plane while you're flying.
Yeah, exactly.
Oof,
I guess I haven't learned that lesson
Good
yet.
luck with that. And did you have a name for the car? Have you ever had names for your cars?
I did not have a name for that car, but I've almost always named my cars.
Really? Well, you gave me a ride here. Does that car have a name?
Yeah, that car's Run Run.
Run.
Yeah. Because my wife always has the nicer cars, and so that's the car that I use to run out and get something and go back. But it's not an enjoyable car. I had like a few years ago.
I enjoyed our ride over.
I'm glad you did.
Yeah. Run.
A few years ago, I had a Volkswagen Passat, which was named Anwar Passat.
Nice.
If you get the reference.
Sure.
Okay. So yeah, I've named my cars
Anwar.
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, I guess I have a name for my car now. It's the Sexy Subi.
You mean the thing on blocks in your driveway?
It's just about on blocks. That's why you gave me a ride here, because it makes that noise. All
Yeah. No, so you blew the head gasket.
I don't know what it is, but it's still running, so I'm still driving it.
Yeah. Obviously not tonight.
No.
Yeah.
Thanks again for the ride.
Yeah, and the drink.
So you traveled around. You landed in San Francisco at some point,
Yes.
and then what? Did you go to college there?
Yeah, I went to college there. I went to San Francisco State.
Uh-huh.
I studied film and American Studies was my minor.
So film. So you had done the PA thing, and you thought,
Yeah.
well, it's there is glamour down that path somewhere.
Well, I was stupid. I was like that smart stupid. Like I had a lot of ideas, and I was intelligent, but I wasn't practical. And my desire,
It's strange because most young men are super practical.
super practical. Yeah, and not driven by anything but practicality.
Right, exactly.
So I had this idea of like, I'm really into film theory and experimental films, and that's what I'm going to study, and somehow I'm going to like fold that into a career. And I was really passionate about it for a while, and then I think I kind of hit a wall with it shortly after graduation. And I think during that time, I'm trying to think of chronology, and I'm probably going to flub this, but I was also writing for fanzines, and I was writing like a little bit of music stuff. There was a magazine from the West Coast called Maximum Rock and Roll, which was kind of like a punk rock magazine. I was writing for them a little bit, doing record reviews and book reviews. And then I got sort of gobbled up by the .com boom in like the mid 90s.
And when gobbled up, how? What were you doing in that boom?
Well, I had met someone that was like, you really need to be in this world of like the internet.
Right.
And she convinced me, and I was kind of tired of not having money. And so I got gobbled up by it, and I worked for a company called CNET, which is still in operation now.
Right.
I was
doing writing?
it was all writing. Some of it, I think initially I was doing product reviews, and then I started doing journalism and like writing about file sharing and like Napster and stuff like that.
Right.
And I did that for a few years, and then
Out on the left coast.
in San Francisco. And then 9/11 happened, and it was at that time, it was also coincided with the fact that my father was ailing, and I felt like, okay, well, maybe I need to do something. And I was actually, interestingly enough, I was planning on moving to New York like weeks before 9/11 happened, and then 9/11 happened, and I said, okay, well, maybe this is a sign. Maybe I need to move back to LA. Spent a year living in LA, working in public radio. Little more than a year working in public radio, and spent a year with my dad. My dad passed in 2002. Met my wife there, and then worked for a few startups, started writing more, started doing more magazine writing, and then we moved out to the Hudson Valley in 2005, had our kid in 2006, started Edible Hudson Valley in 2008, I think.
Wow.
Yeah.
And now here we are. You just brought us all the way around, full circle, and we're up to date.
Yeah.
And now we're here with the Hudson Valley Pilot. Though at some point, somewhere online, it seemed to be called the Hudson Valley River Pilot.
That was an idea that Mark first had. I think initially he was hot on the idea of calling it the bridge, which I liked, but then that felt like it would necessitate that we'd be covering both sides of the water.
Yeah, exactly.
And we knew practically, at least in the beginning, we wouldn't have the resources to do that.
No coverage in Port Ewan.
Yeah. No. Sorry, Port Ewan. You
Yeah.
guys are on your own. So then there was talk about it being the Hudson Valley River Pilot, and then we shortened it to the Hudson Valley Pilot, and now it's kind of called the HV Pilot.
Yeah, and which is the URL, hvpilot.com.
hvpilot.com. Yes.
And if people want to go there and donate, they can to support local journalism.
I would say more importantly, sign up for the newsletter.
And how many people are signed up right now?
The last I looked, I think we're at about 1,025.
Oh, it's about how many people are listening to this show live right now.
Yep.
And time's up. It's been an hour. It's zoomed by.
Let's do another hour. Come on.
Let's,
you got
please.
it.
Well, on the way home, we can do another hour.
Oh, God. I have to give you a ride.
This is Ben, correct me if I'm Norm, and my guest, Eric Steinman. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
I
love
lovely. This so much. Really lovely talking with you. Everybody have a happy Friday. Thanks for tuning in.